Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel with me, Matthew Morgan. We have got an absolute belter of a shotgun review today, but before we get into that, what we have noticed is a lot of people are watching the videos, but we're not getting quite as many subscribers as perhaps we would like. If you could just hit that subscribe button, we'd appreciate it massively. Even if you only watch one video a year and it's me eating mince pies on the Christmas special, it will be greatly appreciated. So give us a moment, hit that subscribe button and help grow the channel even further. Today's video is proudly sponsored by the British Shooting Show, the largest event in the British shooting calendar. And without further ado, let's have a look at what we've got to enjoy today. So this is only the second time this brand has appeared on the channel. Not really a reason for that. Obviously, we get a lot of requests. We've got a lot of stuff to get through. So it just so happens that it just happened that way. However, when I learned this gun was coming out, I had to get my hands on one. So I want to give a massive thank you, big shout out to my friend Chris Potter at Chris Potter Guns, a man who's almost as old as the gun trade itself. This is a Perazzi MX2000S, but it is not just any Perazzi MX2000S. So if I was to say to you, who is the most celebrated clay target shooter in the sporting stroke FITASC fraternity in the last 30 years, you would all shout at your iPhones, tablets, television screens, George Digweed, and you'd be absolutely right. The gun we're going to look at today is a special, very special, limited edition Perazzi MX2000S. It's got George Digweed's name on it. Just to give you a bit of history about the MX2000S as a model, it was launched, unsurprisingly, back in the year 2000, and it was Perazzi's ideal of having a gun that was built specifically for sporting competition clay target shooting, hence the name 2000S. S is, of course, for sporting. Now, what they did, they took the platform of the already very popular MX2000 range of guns, which has an MX8 action with a detachable trigger group, and they used the MX12 platform, which meant it was a non-detachable trigger group with coil springs, because essentially coil springs are a little bit more reliable than V springs, and if you're shooting a lot of cartridges through a competition gun, you want it to be reliable as physically possible. Don't get me wrong, the MX8 has its place. We've done a review on it, so do check that out. But it tends to be favoured, particularly with game shooters, because they're not shooting quite as many cartridges. So there's a little bit of history about this particular model, but what makes this gun so special is its absolute exclusivity. So what Perazzi have done is they have built only 25 of these guns, and they are basically all about a massive celebration of everything George has achieved in his shooting career. Over 30 world titles in compact, sporting, FITASC. The longest clay target shot, I believe, 130 yards in history. I struggle to hit a rabbit at 13 yards sometimes, so I know how impressive that is. And what it's done is it's given everyone the opportunity to not only celebrate George's successes, but also own a gun that's very similar, if not identical, to the one he uses. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at what makes this gun stand out from all those other MX2000Ss that are out there. So we'll start with the action, and it's the Boss style low profile action, which we've looked at many times on this channel from different manufacturers. You would have to say from an over and under point of view, though, Perazzi really are the pioneer of that kind of action. Low profile action done in this very nice kind of satin black. All the engraving on MX2000S is done by hand. So we've got these roses here, some nice relief scroll work. I think it's slightly different to the original design of MX2000S. As I haven't got one next to me to compare it to, don't quote me on that. Now, across the middle, we've got Perazzi MX2000S. This is in the platinum color. You can also get it in gold. However, because this is all about celebrating George's gun and what he shoots, I think he's got the platinum one. So that makes sense. On the other side of the action, it's completely identical. We've got MX2000S, Perazzi MX2000S in this little ribbon across the middle, very nicely done in this platinum color, which is essentially silver. And if we turn it over, this is where the fun really starts. So we've got the limited edition number on the front part of the trigger group. Now, this is number 11 of 25. Now, case in point there, all 25 guns are out there. They are available. I would imagine some have already gone. However, they are available also in different specifications. So I'm going to run through the specification of this particular gun, but don't forget that they are also available from a custom order point of view. I would imagine, like all Perazzis are, you can have what barrel length you want, what rib you want, what custom stock dimensions, or you can order stocks just off the bat, entirely up to you. Perazzis are masters at bespoke shotguns, and they always have been. Same kind of engraving on the bottom. We've got this very subtle rose and scroll work. We've got the engraved trigger guard. We've got the silver or platinum colored trigger, which of course complements the other areas of the gun where they've used these platinum embellishments, which I think personally on the black looks really good. And I actually prefer it to the gold, which you would typically find on this model of shotgun. Top lever, again, we've got some cool stuff here. So we've got GD on the very top of the top lever. So every time you get this gun in your hand and you go to open it, you're going to see the initials of the great man himself. The top lever itself is, of course, engraved. I always think Perazzi top levers are quite nice and skinny and very subtle and very refined. And the MX2000S, which was always a feature of this gun, is it's got a selective trigger. Not all Perazzis, particularly with fixed trigger groups, have got selective triggers, and quite often you had to add that as an option. MX2000S, as standard, you will get a barrel selector. In terms of the operation of the trigger itself, this is done via coil springs. And like I said at the start of the video, that's primarily down to the fact that they're just that little bit more reliable because they don't have the weakness where they might potentially break. And with a competition clay gun, you're going to be putting a substantial amount of cartridges. You just want to cover all the bases in terms of making sure that every time you pull that trigger, you get the required result. So this gun itself is a 32-inch barrel. Now, I believe they're also available in 30 3/4, possibly 30. However, let's not forget the fact this is an out-and-out competition, world-beating pedigree shotgun used by George himself. He is using a 32-inch day in, day out. It would make sense from my point of view for Perazzi to have produced the majority of these guns in 32-inch because, of course, that's what George uses himself. So these 32-inch barrels are 1620 grams, so 1.62 kilos. Now, with Perazzi's, with MX2000S, I always thought you want somewhere between sort of 1570 and 1620 because, of course, that is going to affect the overall weight and, of course, the balance of that gun. These are 1620, which is quite heavy, but what you've got to take into account is that the gun comes choked at 7 and 9, which is Perazzi's 3/4 and full. So what you can then do is you can bore it out accordingly. You can have it multi-choked. From my experience, people don't tend to go for factory multi-choke Perazzi's very often because they do make the gun very barrel heavy. George himself, I know, uses a gun that's choked 3/4 and full. He also has an additional set of barrels, which are 3/8, 3/8. So this one, 711 tapered rib. It's the most popular option on an MX2000S. What is noticeable is it hasn't got a tram line. A lot of people prefer a tram line. It is available with a tram line, but this particular gun, 32-inch, 711, hand file cut, no tram line. Barrels are ventilated, the rib is ventilated, and as with all modern day Perazzis, you can put steel through tightly choked barrels. The barrels are accordingly stamped up, fleur-de-lis and HP steel shot proof. If we take a look at the actual lump, we've got the serial number on there, 2025, and of course, if we needed confirmation, it tells us about all the steel shot proofing, and at the bottom of the lower tube, 1276, which is of course 12 gauge 76mm chambers. So we've got 16 20-gram bars, which are on the kind of heavier side, and that gives us an overall weight of just over 8.5 pounds. That's probably about right. It's kind of the norm, what you'd expect for a competition clay gun. If we had a DT11, for example, or a Caesar Guerini, you would be looking at something very, very similar. And let's not forget, as with all Perazzis, you can pretty much have what you want, 1570, 1590, even lighter than that, depending on, of course, the use of the shotgun. All these guns are factory balanced, as they are pretty much handmade, and that is, as you would expect, pretty much on the pin. One final point to mention, the icing on the cake, is you've got the main man himself's actual signature on the right-hand side of the barrel, just near the breech. So we've got some personalisation, we've got the signature there, and we've also got GD on the top lever, not over the top, nicely done. For me, Perazzi have got it absolutely right in terms of the decoration and the aesthetics of this gun. So, moving on to the stock. Now, you'll notice this particular piece is very, very nicely figured. This is SC2 wood, so it's basically an upgrade on the standard kind of basic woodwork that you get. I understand all these Digweed specials are coming with SC2 wood, so if you can get hold of one, you should be presented with a nice piece of walnut that is very attractive looking, like me. Interestingly enough, this is quite a flat stock. Now, as we'll look at in the box shortly, with a Perazzi, you always get a nice little dimension sheet and a little wallet tells you the cast of the stock. the drop at comb, the drop at heel, etc. This one is 4060 now, or 4059 now. That's quite low for a standard sporting gun. Perazzi standard dimensions are 3550 and 3555. Again, if you wanted something different, it is not a problem to go to Perazzi with the likes of my old friend Chris Potter and have a gun custom built to your exact requirements. All MX2000Ss, the Digweed specials in particular, are coming with a palm swell, not an aggressive palm swell, because we talked about the fact that this is quite a slim gun, particularly in the comb area, which is why it's so popular, particularly with FITASC shooters, which is a kind of a gun down discipline, if you like. So a nice palm swell, nice length of pistol grip. It does feel really, really good in the hand. Standard kind of matte oil finish, many point checkering. That's the standard Perazzi checkering, has been for a number of years, particularly on this model. And one new thing I want to point out is for years, Perazzi have had these quite gummy, hard rubber pads. Now, this pad, I would say, if I get my Inspector Clouseau head on, that's a Cervelati. That's an Italian recoil pad. So it's been ground to fit, but it is a lighter pad, which makes the gun a little bit lighter on the back end. And also, I notice in the box, you actually get additional ones, which I've never, ever seen with the Perazzi before. So it's nice to have a gun that celebrates the successes of someone as incredible as George, but also they're moving forward all the time with the innovation and the ideas they're coming up with. So with this particular pad, which I think is about 25mm, we have got a long stock. We've got 390mm, which is 15¼ inches. The pads in the box make it shorter and longer accordingly. The forend, I know for a fact, I've seen dozens and dozens of photos and videos of George shooting. He always favours a beaver tail forend. So as you would expect on all, I believe, these Digweed specials, you will get a beaver tail forend. Also available in left hand, this of course is a right hand gun with a standard degree of cast, which in Perazzi terms I think is 6 and 12 or 4 and 8 in terms of the millimetre offset. We've mentioned the palm swell. Forend matches the stock very, very nicely. And even the beaver tail is not a big chunky one like an MK38, and it just holds together the whole lines and the sleekness of the Perazzi low profile action design. So moving on to the all new compact Perazzi case. You'll remember previously when looked at an MX8 SC3, it was in an old, much bigger, clunkier case. Manufacturers now are favouring these compact cases, particularly when you look at this kind of gun that's going to be going all over the world in big competitions. It just makes it much neater and much easier to facilitate when you're getting on and off a plane. So combination locks, it won't come as a shock to hear that it's in the Negrini case because it's made by Negrini. So what we've got is, first of all, we've got this special magic Carta Dozio, which basically means let's not let it go rusty, lads, in Italian paper. So that's what will come around the action and the barrels. We've got some traditional black Perazzi gun socks. Okay, one for the barrel and one for the stock. And if we stay in this lower section, we've got a little tube here, and that's got some spare firing pins and springs. You know, when you get to a gun of this level, this is what you need. You know, if you are going to be competing all over the world, shooting lots and lots of cartridges, it just gives you that extra peace of mind to know you've got some spares in your box should something come awry, which of course we always hope it doesn't. Now, I was clever enough regarding the recoil pad. So what we've got in here, we've got 2 additional pads, very nicely logoed up with the Perazzi logo. We've got the hole in the back, which enables us to put the stock tool up without taking the stock off. Brilliant, brilliant idea. That's a very lightweight one. I think that's probably 15mm. We've also got an even thicker pad. So you're going to have somewhere in the region of like 14¾ to 15½. So there's a lot of versatility, a lot of adjustability there with the recoil pads alone. Like I said, I've never seen that from Perazzi before. So that's a good move. We like that. And then inside here, okay, this is basically the identification of the gun. So we've got a little leather wallet, some bump about not pointing it at the dog or putting it in the washing machine. And here we've got, as I mentioned, the stock dimensions are all laid out nice. So you can see exactly what you're buying. We've got 6 and 12 in terms of the cast, which is quite a bit of cast. Got 4059 in terms of the drop at comb and the drop at heel. Remember, they're also available as standard in 3550 and 3555. And if we go on to the other page here, we've got MX2000S, the serial number, the fact that it's a sporter, the overall weight of the gun, the weight of the barrels, the mention of the rib and the rib dimensions, the chokes, and also it's worth mentioning the bores. Now, MX2000Ss tend to be 18.5 bores. You can get an overbore one, you can get an 18.6, and you can get an even tighter one, 18.4. But I believe that Perazzi think that this is the optimal boring for a sporting competition gun. And to be fair, I can't think of any reason why they would get that wrong. So in a nutshell, that's like basically your little warranty book or your little booklet of fun. So in there, you've got explode diagram, all the bits and pieces on. It tells you about the chokes and things if you've got a factory multi-choke one. And to finish off, we've got some very nice alloy Perazzi snap caps in black. And we've got the very important stock bolt tool. This here, although it looks like an adder from Cannock Chase, it's actually the strap for the case. So not only have you got this handy, neat little case to be carrying around, but you've also got a strap. So if you're running through the airport, about to miss your flight, don't worry, because you can strap it to your back like Rambo. We've also got some Perazzi grease, very good quality grease. I've used it many times, and also some silica gel patches. And it's just a really, really nice package. The only thing I would say, I think it would have been a really nice touch to have some kind of limited edition certificate to go with this gun. Just that extra bit of provenance. Yes, we've got the numbering on the gun and we've got the signature, but I think from a package point of view, that final piece of documentation would have really, for me, been the icing on the cake. It is worth pointing out, this is not the first time that Perazzi have done a gun which has been a limited edition to do with George. They did do one back in 2004. It was a silver action 2000S. It had a rounded fore end. Not sure how many were made, but there certainly wasn't the level of decoration and celebration that this gun has got in terms of particularly the signature. But I do remember it did have GD on it somewhere from memory. I would imagine those guns are out there now being shot, being cherished. So I think from my point of view, if you're an MX2000S or a Perazzi fan, part of that story is going to have come somewhere on the line from George Digweed, I would imagine. We've seen him on YouTube, we've seen him in the clay magazines. He's a thoroughly nice bloke and a fantastic ambassador for the sport of clay shooting. I think what Perazzi have done here is, like I said at the start of the video, it's simply a homage to everything George has achieved. And this is a special gun, and I have no doubt these guns are going to be in very, very high demand. It is only the second time we've looked at Perazzi on this channel. But let's not take anything away from Perazzi as a brand. They are absolutely fantastic guns and they are winning medals throughout the globe. Only recently, young Ben Llewellyn from Great Britain won a gold in Lenato in the Olympic skeet with his high-tech. Interestingly enough, if you are shouting at the camera, why doesn't George use a high-tech? Well, he did have a brief spell with a high-tech, which of course was Perazzi's kind of modern generation competition clay gun back in 2016. But he did revert back to his MX2000S. And when you've got a man who's as successful as that, let's just not argue with him, mate. So that is it. That is the very, very special Perazzi MX2000S George Digweed special with me, Matthew Morgan from the Eastfield Gunroom. Once again, huge thank you to my good old friend Chris Potter at Chris Potter Guns for allowing me to borrow this gun. If you have got any questions about this or the George Digweed special in general, feel free to contact me. Details are on the screen, or contact Chris directly. Details are also on the screen. Don't forget to check out the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Today's video is proudly sponsored by the British Shooting Show, and from me and a very, very special Perazzi that's going to hold a lot of fun memories for a lot of people for a lot of years. The master himself, Mr. George Digweed, we salute you. I'll see you soon.